those days used to give me joy. I used to live for those moments, and then they were happening and I had no reaction. It wasn't giving me that purpose, passion. And I think anytime you go into something, whether it's mothering, whether it's becoming an entrepreneur, whether it's your job, and you're driven on passion and you're no longer getting joy, that's the first warning signal that comes in your spirit before the mental health symptoms or physical symptoms ever even start.
Welcome back to Vaginally Speaking, guys. I'm Allison, pelvic floor therapist, lactation consultant, and your favorite person who talks about vaginas on the internet. Today, we are going upstairs to your brain because if your mind is always racing, you can't sleep, you feel wired and tired at the same time, and your pelvic floor feels like it's constantly bracing for impact. This episode is for you. I'm joined by Dr. Romie Mushtaq. Dr. Romie is a board-certified neurologist who brings together more than 2 decades of leadership in neurology, integrative medicine, and mindfulness. She's an award-winning speaker who works with Fortune 500 companies, professional athletes, and global organizations. And she currently serves as the Chief Wellness Officer for Great Wolf Resorts. Her brain shift programs are all about improving mental wellness and building a culture of wellness, and her expertise has been featured on NPR, NBC, TED Talks, and Forbes. Her first book, The Busy Brain Cure, is a national USA Today and Amazon bestseller. Today, guys, we're connecting the dots between a busy brain, burnout, hormones, and your pelvic floor. How stress is in your head shows up as tension, pain, bladder and bowel issues, low libido, and more. We're also going to talk about how you actually can calm your nervous system in ways that really fit life, especially if you're a high-achieving mom or both. Dr. Romie, thank you so much and welcome to Vaginally Speaking. I'm so excited you're here.
Yay, Allison. I've been looking forward to this. I know you personally from an entrepreneurial mastermind, and of all the podcast interviews I do today, I felt so empowered that I am on the Vaginally Speaking podcast. I just want everybody that's listening to us, first of all, thank you. I never take any listener's time for granted. But just repeat that, vaginally speaking. I just feel like I just sit up straighter. It's like a Pilates move, vaginally speaking. I'm honoring the divine goddess energy in my body because I've been in back-to-back meetings until this, and I've been in busy brain mode. And now it's like, ooh, yes, goddess energy has arrived.
Oh my goodness. I love that you just said that. We are goddesses. We need to stop and truly remind ourselves that, right?
Always. Yes.
Yes. So, tell us a little bit about yourself in ways that what brought you here? What took you from being a neurologist to the chief wellness officer to writing these books to really going out there, Dr. Romie, and empowering so much of us to really function at our highest.
Allison, thank you. I was raised in a high achieving family, and I had one success mantra as the daughter of immigrants growing up. We have one doctor and you will become a doctor. Yeah. And I loved that journey. And I entered neurology at a time where less than 5% of the brain doctors in the United States were women. And it was back then. I don't know that I get to share this aspect often, but as a colleague, you're going to get it and your topic. Even as an intern and resident, and for people who don't know the medical system, you're barely out of medical school. And I was just learning the foundations of internal medicine and neurology. I was the only female doctor in the clinic. Women patients would bypass the male full professor attending neurologist to be like, I want to see her. And these men were confused. And they would just sit down and talk to me about their menstrual cycles, about their libido. And I was hearing this year over year. And like a diligent student and doctor, I would go back to look for research, and there was little or none. And that sparked my interest further in neurology, not just to see patients, but to do research. So I became, at a very young age, at age 29, a professor in neurology. Not only was I seeing patients and specialized in epilepsy and doing clinical drug trials, but I was doing cutting edge research on how women's hormones and our entire cycle are affected by diseases like epilepsy and migraines. So I had the joy to stand up at meetings of like 800 or 1,000 neurologists in the room and use words like vagina, orgasm, your sexual health, and estrogen, progesterone, right? And
yes,
so that power was there. I share this with you because I loved my job. It was mission driven. And so I thought, oh, okay, I'm working 120 hours a week to prove myself as a good doctor and see patients and do research. And I learned the hard way that chronic stress can cause physical disease. Chronic stress can kill you. And it almost killed me. And I should have known better. I'm a brain doctor. And at the age of 34 in 2010, I ended up in life-saving surgery from the burnout and physical symptoms. And I woke up in the hospital. And the worst part wasn't this, Allison, that I realized like nothing in medical school or residency or fellowship had prepared me. Like, I don't know what to do. That wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was I was in this dark space and I felt so alone. And as I was going on this healing journey that I talk about in the Busy Brain Cure, it became this mission that I don't ever want another person to feel stuck in the dark and all alone in the workplace. And that is the mission of now my company, Brain Shift Institute, which is, you know, how are we using brain science to build a culture of wellness so people feel cared for and connected in the workplace? And so, you know, I've spent the last 7 years researching what burnout really does to the brain and the body. And 17,000 people aggregated that data and came up with the protocol that you and I are going to break down specifically as it's to vaginally speaking. I so love this topic. I don't Yes.
Before we dig into that, one, I want to say how incredible that you so quickly got the rapport from our patients, right? Like building rapport is huge, that they felt like they were safe and could talk about all the different things, because we know as medical professionals, but also as patients ourselves, that you can instantly feel when you are able to truly open up and when you're going to hold it back, right? And when patients can just sit down and you just see their body relax and they just word vomit, right? And you see the emotions leave their body, you're like, they feel safe. So I thank you for creating that space, because it's something I truly have built my practice around, is like trying to do that.
Yes.
And so it's so important, right? I know that we're really busy. I know that we have this professionalism that we need to upkeep with like our licenses, but at the same time, I still feel like, hey, we're human and they're human. We have to allow that space.
Absolutely. You know, I think one mistake I made early on as a practitioner, that it wasn't until later that I got trained in mindfulness and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. The neurotic neurologist in me always like wanted to do something. Why aren't there answers? Let me find the answers. How do I treat this? And I'm failing you as a patient if I don't do something about it. And I think that contributed to my burnout, like this idea I have to control everything, fix everything. And we forget that our presence is the greatest healer. Yeah.
Therapeutic use of self is what we learn a lot in OT school, is that, you know, just being there and allowing that space is huge. I think you nailed it there. The other thing you talked about is, you know, like all this empowering you did and the research you did and continue, and just like, to me, as you're talking, Dr. Romie, I hear like, you know, so much passion, and it's so exciting. But as you're talking about it, I like sit there and think myself of like what I'm doing now, and so much passion, and you just keep putting stuff in because you're like, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to make a change. And at what point did you feel that burnout and end up having, because, you know, that's, I guess I'm thinking of myself, but the listeners.
When you actually look at whether you're an entrepreneur or employed, we now are burned out from talking about burnout. And I think burnout is now, back when I got sick, burnout wasn't even a term in the medical vernacular. World Health Organization had to come up with it. Now every other person is an Instagram or LinkedIn influencer or TikTok talking about burnout. And most of them are using it incorrectly. There is a difference between having a busy brain, which we're going to talk about, chronic stress, and burnout. And I think I knew something was wrong. I just felt so helpless and alone when the moment it felt like someone else had the remote control to my brain. Like I wasn't on the streaming channel I needed in the moment. Like who has the aux cord plugged into my brain and why am I frazzled during the day and I'm wired and tired at night? And I thought it was a me problem. And I was doing what I thought I could to comfort myself, but it turned out it was all the wrong things. We talk about being dependent on caffeine to go through all day, chocolate for self-soothing, and then wine at night. And it was, how many listeners are listening to this and they're guiltily putting down the coffee or the wine right now? Shame in that. This is actual brain chemistry when you're having a busy brain and in survival mode, and your brain is just signaling you to do what's right in front of you, even though it's not the right thing. And looking back, I think that was it. But where I knew something was really wrong is they talk about the emotional exhaustion and the cynicism. Being an empowered neurologist sitting back then in the clinic, it used to be that my happiest days were when one of my epilepsy patients would bring their prom dress in to show me, or that they got their driver's license because they, the seizures were finally under control and they could go back to driving. Or, we ran the Women with Epilepsy Comprehensive Clinic, and 72 babies were born to people who were initially told, like, you can't have children. Those days used to give me joy. I used to live for those moments, and then they were happening and I had no reaction. It wasn't giving me that purpose, passion. And I think anytime you go into something, whether it's mothering, whether it's becoming an entrepreneur, whether it's your job, and you're driven on passion and you're no longer getting joy, that's the first warning signal that comes in your spirit before the mental health symptoms or physical symptoms ever even start.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense because, it's like you become this on autopilot and you just, the happiness no longer, that the came from the passion no longer fulfills you, or just doesn't even trigger that part of your brain to say, wow, like, look what just happened. Oh, thank you for that. So let's dig into it. What is a busy brain? Like tell us about this. Tell us what you mean by saying that.
So, I was in my first chief wellness officer role with my previous company prior to the pandemic. I was already seeing the signals, as were you. Anybody in the healthcare field prior to the pandemic knew we were sitting on a mental health crisis. The pandemic just blew it open for the public. And at this moment, I thank all the millennials and Gen Z that use social media to talk about it so authentically. It made the whole world stop and listen. And it turned out all that stress management advice we were getting, just stop and breathe and eat berries and set some boundaries, was like no longer working. It was actually starting to aggravate people. And it was at that time I was getting called now virtually to all these companies who are now openly talking about mental health to give lectures. And we started to collect data and we give people the busy brain test. So 17,000 people took this assessment. We're going to put it in your show notes. It's for free. It's on my Instagram to show me what was happening when people were under chronic stress. And it was fascinating. We found out that the top 3 symptoms were this: difficulty falling and staying asleep, number 1. Number 2, difficulty focusing during the day, no matter if you were on ADHD medications or not, using caffeine. You were wondering if you had adult onset ADHD. And the last one is ruminating anxiety. That, it's like that song that's an earworm that's playing on repeat in your brain. But the worst, it's negative, toxic thoughts and worries that are on repeat. And it was those 3 symptoms: anxiety, difficulty focusing, and insomnia, that make up a busy brain. And if you go with a busy brain for too long and your busy brain test score is above a 60, then we know you're now in burnout, and other physical symptoms have likely started to show up, including, believe it or not, I don't need to tell you, but your listeners will be surprised, pelvic health and libido are some of the earliest symptoms that kind of tag right along with this, except people just say, women, something's wrong with me. I'm just not in the mood anymore. I've been faking orgasms half my life. I'll just continue to do it. I'm not in the mood. And we internalize it instead of realizing this is your hormones signaling to you like, hey, sister, something ain't right in here.
Yeah, right. And I say with that goes right along with that, Dr. Romie, is that when I see somebody or tell them about pelvic floor, the first thing I say is that your pelvic floor isn't just physical. psychosocial, emotional, trauma filled. I mean, I feel like it goes with what you just said. You start burning out stress. Where do we store all of that? We store it in our pelvic floor.
And I want to say this to honor Eastern wisdom. Science is finally catching up to what spirituality has known for thousands of years. Traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic Indian medicine says for men and women, unprocessed emotions are stored in our second chakra, our first and second chakra, which is your, root of your pelvis and your pelvic floor. And like, it's just all the symptoms we talk about in burnout. It just is that, like, they are so tied together, and you can't heal one without healing the other.
Yeah, which is, it's so true. And I think, the interesting thing is when I started my journey in the pelvic health world, I didn't look as much into the Eastern medicine, very much was focused on Western medicine. And all these things started like popping up and things started connecting. And I started looking into it and I was like, wow, there is so much to it that we don't talk about or even connect. And, I truly believe in the chakras and the energy. I never understood like energy really coming off people. I worked with peds before, and there was a ton of energy with peds. But when I started doing pelvic health and working with people, I was like, I can truly feel energy, good or bad, coming off of you. I can feel, where you're storing this. You can watch people. I think of the throat chakra too, is when you're working with them, you can see them like hold off on expressing some things. Right. And I
say this is it's chakras, but in the modern day term, for anybody that's like, I'm going to turn this podcast off, it just got woo woo. This is known as the mind body connection.
Yes.
Mind body spirit connection. And there's actual science as we learn about the sympathetic nervous system, and that, I talk about in the Busy Brain Cure, your airport traffic control tower is your hypothalamus. And we know in chronic stress and burnout, your inflammatory markers like IL-6 are elevated, and that throws off now your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is the governance of all your hormones and sympathetic nervous system. So women are getting hit twice as hard. It's your innervation of your pelvic floor that is getting disrupted, as well as hormonal imbalance, thyroid, estrogen, testosterone. And that is, I want to say that. Yeah. And thank you for being so sensitive to energies. My practice has taught me this, and I don't know how you feel about this, is I, like you, am sensitive to people's energy and flow. And I've just learned not to label anything good or bad. It just is attachment, right? And try to bring people to equanimity. They may be below the line, above the line, but it just is. And whatever they're releasing, we have the honor to bear witness. And I don't assign it good or bad.
Yes. Usually when I'm working with people and I feel it, we just talk about allowing the body to give your body permission to let it go, whatever it is, right? And most people will say some people will say they feel heat is something, it's getting really warm in this area. And that's when I'll usually say your body's releasing something it needs to let go of. So just allow it to let go of. And, just helping them through it and telling them that, a big thing I say is it's not me, it's you, right? I'm just helping guide your body to give it permission, and it's really you letting go, because we have to honor that it's that person giving themselves the permission. Yeah. Okay. So you talked about, the busy brain, and then you talked about the hormones aspect. And I know people listening, hormones right now are a really big thing that are starting to get talked about even more. So I can assume there's some listeners that are thinking, Dr. Romie, okay, so now I need to go get these hormones fixed. Is that what I need to do first for my busy brain? What would you tell them when somebody may think like that?
What do I do? First is, I think, here in the United States, for all the U.S. listeners, you can't do anything in your life without a credit score. Get a bank loan, a mortgage, car insurance, whatever it is always dependent on your credit score. Yet we fail to know our brain score as women. And your brain is your currency. It is everything. It controls your mind, your body, your spirit, your output, your input, all of it. So the first step is actually know your brain score. Hop in the link and get a busy brain test score. I think, this is not about emotions. This is about facts. Because you know you're not going to go out and buy a $1.5 million home if your mortgage was only approved for $400,000, right? It's just that simple. It's the same rational way, and I know it can be scary, that I want you to get your busy brain score. And then we took those 17,000 data points, and I went back to the research in psychoneuroimmunoendocrinology, how the mood is tied to the structure of the brain, hormones, and your immune system, how all of it is together. And we came up with an 8-week protocol that are micro habits that we actually broke down and said, do this and then do that. And it turns out, even for pelvic health, the first thing you need to do is restore your circadian rhythm, that, biological clock, the airport traffic control tower, and that is through regulating your sleep. And I know so many new mothers on here listening are rolling their eyes because sleep is just, not in your wheelhouse right now with young children, with a busy career, juggling it all. But could you even give yourself a 5 to 7 day sleep vacation? Like, bring in help, ask a partner, ask extended loved ones. And that is the first place to start.
Healing starts in sleep, right?
Yes.
What do you say to the people? Because I could raise my hand of the women that are like, I constantly always wake up at 3 a.m. or 2 a.m, right? Because we all know that. We all know that. And I kind of know.
Let me just pick up the phone and scroll TikTok or Instagram, or I might have forgotten what's on my calendar for tomorrow, or I'm wide awake. Let me just do some laundry before the kids get up. Yeah. And that's a key symptom of busy brain. So the first thing, we have an entire sleep protocol, and it comes to your inbox for free when you take the busy brain test, that walks you through this. So the way we get over it is we are giving you natural supplements to take to re-regulate your brain. Magnesium and 5-HTP, which is a precursor to melatonin and serotonin. We take away the melatonin. That's actually doing more harm. But here's the hard part, Allison, that we have to ask people to do. We take away the alcohol. I say for that cycle, and even the 8 weeks, if you can, no alcohol. And because that raises your body temperature, it creates inflammation in your hypothalamus. And now I don't know, was it the alcohol? And if you go off the alcohol and you're still waking up, then, we also get additional labs of the magnesium and 5-HTP alone. Typically in 7 days, people are fine. But if there's still something, then I know for women, we need to check a full thyroid panel. That's the first place I start, especially 1 to 2 to 3 in the morning. And after that, we look in addition to progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone levels. And this isn't just because people, if you're watching YouTube or seeing this Instagram clip, this isn't just about my age and perimenopause. This is about women at every stage and age of your life. You can have a abnormal thyroid. We found is probably the most common abnormality in women with busy brain. And, it could lead to PCOS or chronic pelvic pain. So you're coming to Allison with chronic pelvic pain, low libido, painful, sexual intercourse. And really at the back end, the root cause could be a busy brain and one of these hormonal abnormalities.
Absolutely. And we talk about that so much of what's going on here.
Yes.
If we can't work on what's going on holistically in the body, in that it's really heavy in the mental health aspect and psychosocial. Yes. If we can't work on that, we're not going to see results physically, because if we just work on those physical, we may see improvements for about 3 months. And then what happens is it all comes back because something triggered, or we went in that cycle, right?
What we found here was a scary thing that shocked me in doing the research, and it really made sense to what I was going through. Most women, the first presenting symptoms are not the low libido, chronic pelvic pain, irregular menstrual cycles. The first presenting symptoms that we dismiss and we internalize as personal failures are difficulty focusing and anxiety. And society doubles up. What did they tell them? Oh, just drink this mom juice, i.e. wine. Or you're not cut out to work and be a mother. Maybe you need to stay at home. Like, people are shamed into thinking, and these are the first symptoms of busy brain. And as your score climbs up in the inflammation, then the physical symptoms start. And so I think this is the wake-up call, that if you're having difficulty focusing and you're feeling anxious and something has shifted in your menstrual cycles or your sex drive or your pleasure, difficulty having orgasm, pain during sex, like busy brain could absolutely be the cause of it.
Absolutely. And I keep like thinking of busy brain and just how much we talk about when we should be having orgasms, right? How many women, they can't stay present. They can't stay present when they're having intercourse with their partner. Their brain is off, open. I always say you have a million tabs open. You're here, there, right? Like we are. Be a mom or a high achieving woman, we've got a million tabs open in our brain.
Or you just barely started to relax because of foreplay. And then all of a sudden that creative idea on the project you were stuck at work comes to you. And they're like, no, this is your time for your body and mind and pleasure. And that is exactly it. You're right. Busy brain, we say you have multiple browser windows open on your computer and in your brain. And, but what we found is so healing if we can get to that point is, and so can I share a little personal story here?
Please do.
I come from a very traditional South Asian background, and I don't know if I can say this on your podcast, but
you could say whatever you want to.
I love that. I was a virgin when I got married. And despite being I think because I was a doctor, my mom and aunties just thought I knew what I needed to know about sex. And then I blame Jessica Simpson because she got married maybe a few years before I did. And she was such a proud virgin and talked about how her wedding night was magical and her sex life wasn't. So I thought I was going to have the Jessica Simpson fairy tale.
For sure.
Clearly, somebody educated Jessica Simpson on orgasm and pleasure and intimacy, and I didn't get the memo. Like, I was taught the anatomy of sex. I wasn't taught anything more. And it was so challenging and not pleasurable at all. And I think a lot of it maybe had to do with my marriage as well. It was a semi-arranged marriage, and it taught me when I started to do the research and talk to women about sexual health. And finally, one of my favorite books is still, and I hope it's still around, is Dr. Hilda Hutchison's What Your Mother Never Told You About Sex. And so I think alongside my book, I want everyone to read that book. It's an oldie, but a goodie, and really took the stigma out of it. And what I learned in that I remember with the Busy Brain Cure, in today's world, sex has become ruined because of pornography and social media and women being performative, that we've lost the physical intimacy and foreplay. And that if you can shut down the TV, put down the phones, and actually have prolonged physical intimacy, it is one of the best things you could do for your nervous system. Even do it that you're scheduling, either whether it's just you and yourself or with a partner, that physical intimacy without having intercourse. And it is one of I think the most healing things you could do in the immediate for your entire nervous system. That oxytocin release is sacred for women.
Oh, absolutely. And what I would say is that I tell people, Dr. Romie, that majority of women are responders when it comes to intimacy. We're not initiators. So if we don't have that prolonged foreplay, that can also be that disconnection of like, I'm not in the mood.
Yes.
You didn't really prepare me, right?
And
I can't just flip a switch where I already got these busy brains that we're going to be working on, but I can't flip a switch.
I can't do this if I'm in Dr. Romie CEO mode. You can't do it if you're in mom mode. Like, you need to be able to like change the station in your brain to be like, oh, this is the intimacy channel. I can like forget about the dishes, and I can forget about work emails, and I can, do this and take empowerment on our own. And you're right. I love what you said, that we are responders, or this toxic movement that like you have to be in your queen energy and let the man take the lead. No, I take the lead over my body. Like you need to be able in your goddess energy to say, this is what I desire. Can you help me? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think thank you for sharing your story, because, I do see a lot of patients that come in with different stories that are similar, that they saved themselves till marriage, or they had a different upbringing in their culture or religion that has caused this challenge around intercourse that then unfortunately brought them shame or embarrassment because they just didn't have either proper education on it, or they were it was blocked from them actually having it.
Yeah.
And so I think that is something to be said, because it doesn't mean that you're behind. It means this is an opportunity for you to learn more and really understand, right? And I liked that you said it can be with a partner or solo. So one of the biggest things I tell people is, hey, if you can't look at your own body or understand your own body, how can you give others permission to allow it? You're not going to be able to fully let go and allow that individual to if you can't yourself.
Yes.
Because if you can't yourself look at yourself, even if it's not for pleasure, if you can't look at yourself or understand what feels good and doesn't feel good, how are you supposed to communicate that?
Absolutely. And I want to empower that. And so for anybody listening that may have that story, when you have a busy brain or you're stressed, it's not uncommon that root chakra and second chakra become blocked, and you automatically feel a whole range of emotions around sex or just pelvic pain, or dysmenorrhea. And so healing both the stress and everything Allison is saying is to heal that relationship with your body and release that. And I will say, there's a happy ending to the story. After my divorce, I proudly went through my, Samantha era, if you know the sex references, because it was that long ago, and became sexually empowered and saw that as a part of my divine feminine energy. And what helped was my yoga practice and mindfulness and meditation practice, and now at my age and stage in my life, hormone replacement therapy is a miracle. Hallelujah.
Yes. I love the Sex and the City reference. First of all, we all love a good Samantha, but yes, to all of the above, being able to understand yourself, being empowered by that, because as women, we should be empowered in our body and sexuality. We don't have to be ashamed of it. And yes, hormone therapy, which, I had Dr. Sim on here, Dr. Romie. And so they got to hear some about the hormones there too, because it's so important, right? We are all very excited about that. Tell us how, you feel you're talking about this, and how, if somebody wanted to have you come and speak to them, be their organization or students, how would you, one, want to be approached, but two, what is something that they feel like they could, the audience could take from it, because of, sitting in this big audience, and, we can say the listeners right now, they're listening in the car, they may be able to listen by themselves and say all the things, but sometimes there's something being said when there's 100 other people around us listening.
I think it's so powerful. So thank you for that. In my part of my life, I'm Chief Wellness Officer at Great Wolf Resorts. And so my job is creating wellness programs for over 14,000 employees. And the other half is companies hire me as a keynote speaker. And my programs are designed with, neuroscience and actionable steps for people and cultures to navigate change during this time. And, quite frankly, there isn't any industry or workplace that isn't suffering a mental health crisis. And they were burned out of talking about burnout. And so I get hired to speak, and one of my most common topics is heal busy brain and ignite hope. This whole idea of you can heal busy brain. Here are the 8 steps to heal if you have burnout. And then the next part of my research will end on this. And people always ask me, well, Dr. Romie, you got out of burnout and you healed busy brain. What happened? And I ended my book in this way, is that I found hope. And I feel hope. And hope is the most misunderstood word in the English language. People think it's something woo-woo. If you're manifesting, you shouldn't say, I hope I have this. Hope is actually the agency to choose what comes next. I got out of my divorce and I had the agency to choose. I wanted sexually healthy relationships with myself and with other men, that was hope. And so that is the next thing that I am working on. And that is the next leadership talk I'm talking about, is in conscious leadership, is the call to action for leaders in today's world is to be a hope holder. So I give mental health talks to employees and leadership talks on building the science of hope, to improve engagement. I mean, people are so disconnected from work these days, aren't they?
Yes. And the reason I brought it and shifted from orgasms to speaking and talking is that we're in work more than we are at home.
Girl.
And what affects us in work affects us in the home, right? And so I know that could have seemed
people
like
are
a
listening
weird
going,
shift.
wow, we just went from orgasms and sex to organizational wellness. But you're right. Thank you for relating it to people. Is our work comes home with us, and our bosses like don't want to admit it, but they know because they take work home, and you're trying to relax and you're trying to, parent if you have children or take care of elderly loved ones. And then you're like have no bandwidth left to sexually pleasure yourself or have an intimate relationship with a loved one if you're blessed to have one at home. And it gets in the way. And that's why I go into organizations is, how can I help you heal busy brain and ignite hope?
I love that so much, Dr. Romie. And I hope at some point I can have you back on here because this was incredible. And, so many women I know listening to this, men and women, right? This affects us all, but I have so many listeners that I know can relate to every aspect that you just talked about. And I truly hope if you're listening that you go to the show notes. And if we've learned anything today, we learned from Dr. Romie that we need to go take that busy brain quiz, right? We need to see what our score is because that is our credit score to life. And we need to be able to understand that so that we can start getting the orgasms we deserve, because that is probably one of your biggest blocks. We need that libido. We need that arousal, desire, orgasms, that we make better decisions with that. So thank you so much, Dr. Romie, for being on here. And you guys, I will have all the ways in the show notes to follow Dr. Romie on Instagram, her website, her quiz. Please give her a follow as she provides so much really great information that we all can benefit from. Dr. Romie, thank you so much.
Allison, thank you. And be empowered. Everybody, one more time, repeat after me. Vaginally speaking.
Vaginally speaking.
Calling you the divine energy. I feel like this is going to be one of my phrases when I need to get unstuck in the mud next year. Vaginally speaking.
Yes. I love that. With that response in your body too. Woo! All right, guys. Thank you so much. Next week, you'll hear from me again.